We are knee deep in summer. The weather is beautiful. The sun is shining, and there's nothing we'd rather be doing than sitting in a basement and talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Isn't that right, Vince?
Yeah, obviously, the sun hurts. It's trying to kill you outdoors. As someone who's had allergies my entire life, Mother Nature is trying to destroy me. People talk about saving the planet, not me. I'm in a constant war against her. But anyways, anytime I can be inside in a cool basement playing an RPG, that's a win for me, 100%.
Yeah, you see, I like a little balance in my life, and I do very much enjoy outside time, but I need to balance that with the entire opposite, which is sitting in a dank basement playing Dungeons and Dragons with nerds for like 6 to 8 hours straight. So I appreciate that you appreciate Dungeons and Dragons time, no matter the weather. That's the best thing about this hobby, right?
Of course, yes. A vast majority of my youth I would describe as having spent in dank basements. Absolutely, that is true.
There's just a constant drip. You're not sure where it's coming from. It feels
Ever
like they've
present.
got a humidifier going somewhere, but there isn't. It's just where we are.
No, I mean, it sort of increases the verisimilitude of exploring the dungeons, right? You feel like you're in that same location.
Yeah, there's a dark corner. There's spider webs in there. Any Midwestern basement has some wide variety of spiders that are living in there. And you learn to coexist. You don't want to mess up what things that they're actually down there eating, right? You don't want those things to take over.
No, yeah, they're keeping all the bugs in check. Yeah, so,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah, that is a very important thing, is to live in harmony with the other denizens of your basement. Vince, we actually had 4 episodes now that have gone live, and we are at a full coin flips chance that the audio is going to be decent. What's your guess on this one?
I think you can do it, John. I believe in you. I mean, we'll see every time. The listeners are going to play Russian roulette with your audio every single one to see whether or not it's good or not. So that's fine.
The problem that I have is just like when you got everything figured out, it's just like anything else in life. It just throws you a curveball. I was like, I got it all down. I got this new software all figured out. I feel really confident. And then it done fucked it up again. So here we go. Hopefully this one, we got it figured out, but I apologize in advance if not. And so for our first...
We tried.
Yeah, we tried, and we are going to continue to try. Thank you for your patience in this and all things with this podcast. For the first month, we were like, look, we're going to put out an episode every single week for a month. So we got 4 episodes from the get-go. And then we were going to go to every other week. And we just started talking right before we start recording. We're kind of like, I don't want to keep going with this weekly thing.
Yeah,
right?
It's good, man. I just want to keep recording these. Like, it's really fun. I got a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot going on. Like, if we can, we're going to try to get as many in as possible. That's what it comes down to. If we can deliver them weekly, we will. But both of like John has a very busy schedule. I have a very busy schedule. It'll be at worst every other week. But just look, stay tuned on Tuesdays. And if a new episode drops, Merry Christmas, I guess. There you go.
Yeah, and if you follow us on Instagram, if you're a regular Instagram checker, we have a Fireball the Gazebo Instagram page, so you'll know there. Vince does a great job of making sure that he pops those up when a new episode is live, so you won't miss it there. As well,
Instagram, Twitter, whatever it's called now, Blue Sky, Facebook, all these dumb things, all of these things that have destroyed our world. I'm posting on all of them. So there you go. You can find it there under both my account and under the Fireball the Gazebo account.
Right. Yes. And then also, make sure you don't miss by, turning on notifications and subscribing on YouTube. And then, when you do wherever I don't know how it tells you. I know when I go into Spotify, I just go to like my followed podcasts and it just shows them in order. And, usually it doesn't take me long to get through. Do you have a long list of podcasts that you follow on your regular podcast listener place?
Yeah. Pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, mine too. Mine's about 20, I'd say. And some of them are like, I got to be in the mood for it, right? I like the crime ones, the true crime ones. I like those, but only in the right mindset, or if like I'm planning for the right kind of D&D session or whatever. It's like you want to add a little bit of dark inspiration. Let's get some real world murderers in the building. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. So a lot of mine are subject dependent. So if it's talking about a subject I'm interested in, then I'll listen to that episode. If it's a subject I'm not, then I'm like, okay, skip. Right. And that's usually how I mitigate. Because I'd say I probably have like 30 or 40 that I follow total in the feed. So like, I just don't listen to every one of them every week. But Hey, I hope for you, all of our topics are always interesting and you're always listening. Don't ever
That's
skip an episode. Don't be like me.
yeah. Don't do that. Like I think we almost just talked ourselves into a corner here of like telling people
Oh
not to
no.
listen to ours all the time. But that, yeah, like if there's a certain subject matter that I'm really pumped about, like Magic the Gathering limited podcasts where they talk about draft and Magic podcasts, I listen
Sure.
to those every episode. But most stuff, like whether it's comedy, whether it's true crime, whether it's like newsy news related stuff, those kinds of things, it's just kind of like, does it pique my interest when I'm
I mean, I
scrolling
have like
through?
I'd say 5 that are my every week I always listen to, never miss an episode. So I hope we get into your top 5 as well. That's what we want.
Yeah, Fireball Gazebo is one of the 5 because you love listening to yourself more than anything, Vince. I
Oh
know.
God. Yeah.
And Trapped Under Plastic. I hear that you're a fan of that one as well.
I do watch it every week. Yes. That's although I watch that on YouTube. All right, John, you've got an item here in our news section that when you put it in when I was prepping for the show, I was like, I think John lost his mind because the entry in the news item in our combined sheet here just says DCC. This is how John entered it.
Mhm.
Needs an RPG. And I was like, Dungeon Crawl Classics, one of the greatest old school RPGs currently being published and a wonderfully successful RPG. They've got it covered, man. It's out there. You can get it. But this is not apparently what you're talking about.
Yeah, I just thought all this time those were choose your own adventure books. No, that's the trick.
No, it's a really good RPG. We'll talk about it sometime on the show. I'll bring
For
it in.
sure. I've played some. I've gotten the big heavy duty hardcover one. That one's great. But and maybe even it'll fit in today when in our discussion of what makes an adventure good, because there's some things good, bad, and otherwise in those that we can beg, borrow, and steal from. But no, DCC, as I wrote it here, refers to the book series Dungeon Crawler Carl. And
which I have never heard of.
You never heard of. Okay. It's one of those things you either know it or you don't. And it was completely off of my
So you mean like
radar.
all pieces of knowledge in existence?
Yes. You either know it and you are like, it is hit like whatever wavelength of where you gather information from the nerd sphere. It's either all over there or it's completely off the radar. And I only heard about it probably 3 months ago. And I started reading the book series. So here's the best way I can describe this to try to give it a short synopsis. Okay. The Hunger Games. So in the Hunger Games, there's all these people that are from different districts that are brought together and they have to fight to the death. Okay.
I'm vaguely familiar with it. Yes.
Okay. So it's like the Hunger Games, except for instead of it being PvP, it is PvE. It is versus the
Running Man.
Yes. It is just like the Running Man. It's aliens. They have taken the entire external part of the Earth and they squished it. So it's a perfectly flat sphere. And when they did so, everyone on the planet that was indoors dies.
Okay.
Because you get squished in along with the building that you're in. If you happen to be outside when this happens, a big thing comes across your vision that says you need to make your way to a staircase. And the staircases will close in X number of hours. If you're not in there by now, you're stuck on the surface of the earth until you die, which is probably not going to be long because everything's gone. And basically, you get into this multi-level dungeon, and it is basically a TV show. This is similar to Hunger Games. It's a TV show for these aliens that go through planets and collect the minerals of your planets for them to use for their own nefarious purposes. But they realize that they can actually make more money by making a TV show about the sucking of the resources of your planets, as long as they're already going to be there. And very fantasy, like very RPG, very MMO, classic MMO feel, as well as a lot of pop culture references. It's a fast moving. It has its own stat system. It has its own like gear and loot system. It like tells you the loots and the stats and everything as they get it and what the item does. You know, he can con mobs and the mobs will like give vague descriptions of what they do and that kind of thing. But the book series moves really fast. It's very high action, but it's like I can envision the RPG rule set for this as I'm reading it. And it's so fun. I know that it's kind of people either love it or hate it kind of a thing. I'm just enjoying it. I've just finished up or about to finish up the first book. But anyway, I'd put that out there because I'm curious. I'm surprised that honestly the RPG doesn't exist yet, but I have a feeling it's going to soon. And I will.
Yeah,
be
sometimes these
super
things just take
invested.
time. Like you mentioned, like right before off air, you mentioned Brandon Sanderson, and like when I read, Mistborn or whatever years ago, like, the first thing I thought was, wow, this is very obviously a role playing game, right? Like as I was reading through it, I was like, well, this magic system and this whole thing just feels like a role playing game. And I mean, sure enough, now that does exist. There is a whole Mistborn RPG and stuff. So I mean, I think sometimes these things just take time, right? Like the idea has to gestate and become popular enough and so on that eventually you get that ancillary product.
Yeah, and the licensure has got to line up, right? Where in this case, the author needs to be as good a part of it, and that they're making the right amount of money. And then is that actually financially viable for this third party company to make it as well? Like there's a lot more details in this to make it actually hit the real world shelves. But I was just like, oh man. And I'm just curious. I wanted to put it out into the ether here because I don't know if any of our listeners have heard of Dungeon Crawler Carl and if they have had this same feeling. So I'm
Are you the
curious.
author of Dungeon Crawler, Carl? Hit us up. We'll talk about the RPG with you. We'll write it for you. There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. We could spin this out. Like I have the utmost confidence in our ability to make this thing a critical hit.
Okay. All right.
I just said something that made me like remember something that I had mentioned to you earlier in the week.
Okay.
And that was I mentioned our listeners, right? And in the last episode,
Oh yes. Okay.
I asked for people to give us good ideas of what do we call you. Okay.
Yes. What are the people who are big fans of Fireball the Gazebo?
Yeah.
Yes.
What are they called? And there was one that when reading through the comments, because Vince and I read through the comments of every episode on the YouTube. So even if you listen to us on the podcast location, hit up the YouTube, put your comment in there. Vince, what was the one that jumped out at us that was like, this is a winner, gold star for the day?
Gazeboids.
Yeah. Gazeboids. I mean,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Gazeboids is great.
I mean, I'm kind of mad that we didn't think of that first.
Look, it's the wisdom of crowds. Okay. It's long been known that you've got to go. None of us are as smart as all of us. And somehow also none of us are as dumb as all of us. It's both true. Right. And here we went to the people and John Democracy delivered. The people in action delivered a winner. Yeah. Gazeboids is the hit. That's just what it is. So we welcome all the Gazeboids back for another exciting episode. We will say that more in the future. There you go. Thank you for being loyal Gazeboids.
Yeah, we very much appreciate it. The other thing that it brings that level of nostalgia to it for me is because Gazeboids in my head is a connection to the greatest pizza chain mascot of the 90s.
Sure, the Noid.
Yeah, Noid, right? From Domino's Pizza. So yes. The Gazeboids, Noids. I assume that each of you all look like the Noid as you're sitting or listening. I mean, there's a
got their full outfit on with their little floppy ears. Yes.
Yeah. Were those like rabbit ears? I don't even know.
I don't know what he was meant to be.
He was in like a unitard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a merch idea. If ever there was one.
Sure.
It just says Gazeboid and it shows a picture of Noid.
We got to be careful of Domino's. I'm sure very aggressive legal team coming after us with a season.
They don't even use them anymore, do they?
I'm sure they've still retained that. Like, he's on a shelf. He's like down in the Indiana Jones vault. You know what I mean? Like right next to the Ark of the Covenant, but they'll still come after you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When they have to come out with the crowbar and like pry open the crate. Pull the
Noid out.
By 2030, he's going to be back. Mark my words. It's like everything's cyclical and that's that. Okay. So Vince, I want to start with your recap of your last session. You've got something on here. Do you have anything from your last session that you want to talk about? I want to talk.
I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit about when we get into the main topic today, which we haven't even introduced 15 minutes into the show because we're really good at this. Mm-hmm. We're talking about, what makes a good adventure? How do you actually run a good adventure? What are the components of something that's actually compelling as an adventure? But I have a very specific story I want to share here, John. Mm-hmm. So as I've mentioned in previous weeks, I am running my people through Return to the Keep on the Borderlands. So this is the republish of the thing. Keep on the Borderlands is one of the most popular adventures of all time. Millions of people have played through this adventure, millions and millions of people. Maybe some of you, maybe some of the Gazeboids listening right now have played through it.
Nice.
Okay. Return was just like an update of it that like took place canonically in world about 20 years later after the original party went in and broke up the Caves of Chaos. Okay. And at any rate, what I really want to talk about here is the allure of the unknown. Okay. And here's why I want to talk about this. Because one of the interesting elements of the Caves of Chaos and Return to Keep on the Borderlands, that adventure path in general, I don't know if you've ever ran it, but the PCs can very quickly learn where these caves are. Everybody in town will tell them. It's not like a mystery. Okay. And when you walk into the valley and you can see more or less all of the caves. Okay. That contain various and sundry different monsters. Okay. Or monster groups or different, there's like different factions and stuff like that are vying for control. And people in town will helpfully explain, if you get the right rumor or ask the right questions, that like, oh, as you go higher up and deeper in, it's more dangerous. Okay. So in other words, the PCs can have some sense in their head. If you just like explore the very front of the cave entrance, it's pretty obvious sort of which ones are really scary and which ones aren't. Right.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I lay them all out. The PCs do some basic checks and they're like, oh, we know. They start to hear about this idea that there might be a cult or a temple or something. Like it's kind of vaguely spiced throughout, right? And they're like, well, we can't go in this last cave. It looks way too scary and dangerous. Okay, fine. I wouldn't expect them to do the sort of final boss cave yet anyways. So they had full knowledge, full capability to go in there. Didn't want to do it. Seemed too dangerous. Okay. They make a choice. Fine. Some time passes. Not much, like an adventure passes, like a week. The next week, they're like, they learn a rumor that there's this weird thing on the map in the woods called Q. They don't know what it is. But they just know there's something in the woods called Q. The kobolds basically tell them. Okay. And they're like, we got to figure out what this thing is. So they go exploring in the woods. And eventually they find Q in the woods. And Q is a big back door into the temple. Okay. So they have to go through, like, you have to open this big cave door that kind of opens like a garage door. It's full of skeletons, but the skeletons won't initially attack or do anything unless you kind of try to go in and don't say the key, the special word that lets you pass, right? The password.
That's the word.
At any rate, that's the word. And so they like figure it out, get past the skeletons, then find the little cave entrance, then keep exploring. And eventually they're in the boss cave. They're in the final cave. Okay. But because every step of that along the way was unknown and they felt like they were like unlocking a mystery, they just kept going.
Oh, yeah.
And so they couldn't stop themselves. When they could have gone in there and done the same thing, been fully prepared, like gone in there like SEAL Team 6, right? And just been like, let's go, let's take these guys out. But they wouldn't when they had the full freedom of choice. But as soon as there was some mystery to it, that they were like, well, we got to figure out the next piece. Where does this cave go? Where does this one go? Right. And they didn't know the next answer. They were like, well, we got to keep going.
Right. Yeah, we can't stop. I mean, there's a bit of that is kind of, I think, some of the aura, the essence in the draw of classic Dungeons and Dragons is this exploring, this adventuring, this the unknown, right? That kind of is a core thing as humans, as we talk about the ancestry of humans, and that is finding something new and exploring the world around you is kind of key to like what differentiates us amongst other things in other animals. We don't have a singular environment, and we learn to live in coexistence within that environment, for good, bad, or otherwise. We are constantly pushing the edges, and in our everyday lives, we don't get to do that very much anymore. And so it's still, you still get this like this rush or this desire that you don't even know is buried inside of each of us. And then when you get to experience that in the game, you're like a moth to a flame, baby.
Oh, 100%. I mean, certainly that's like the conceit of the dungeon as an entire idea writ large, right? I just found it really funny here. And it reminded me that, like, if you really are trying to motivate your PCs to do anything, like just a quick tip, if you're ever trying to motivate your PCs to do anything, then give them half the answer and they will do anything to get the other half of the answer, right? Like
Right.
there is nothing will stop them. Okay.
And it
Describe
is,
something a bit unusually or too detailed, have a door that they can't seem to get open, have some language they can't seem to translate. Like you could do this in a million ways, but they will stop at nothing. They will go to the ends of the earth for that.
yes. And it is amazing how little like reactions, like rewards, or in any sense of the word, is what it will take for
Yeah.
players to feel satisfied, excited, and the drive to keep going. Because if you lay it all out for them, and then they just know what they need to do, the bar for expectations of reward, or what they look at as success, raises exponentially. But when it's unknown, so little, this other, like, we found out this note connects back to that drawing on
Right.
the door, and they're just like so excited that this was a
The
reward for
solving
them.
is reward in and of itself. It's
Yes.
getting that dopamine hit. Yes.
Yeah. And that is the making of stories. So at the end of the day, when we think about what makes a good adventure, a good session, a good campaign, and what doesn't, is the
Right.
stories we can tell about it later, and the memories that we make of these amazing moments. And that unknown is such a key part of it. That is such a great connection. Way to line that up with what our main topic is today, Vince.
Absolutely.
I had just a real quick brief on my last session last weekend. It ended up being another session with no combat, and I didn't even realize we didn't have a combat until we were packing up at the end of the night. It was one of those really good no combat sessions. You're like,
Sure.
oh shit, we didn't fight at all. Wow. It was a heist situation.
Love me a heist.
But it was a heist designed in a way for us to complete, or mostly complete in a single session. And I think that's a really smart way to design things, to really understand the scope of what you're creating as a dungeon master, as well as when you're a player at the table, the level of complexity in your scheme, your planning, you need to go about, right? Because the last thing we want to do is spend 4 hours as PCs coming up with this very intricate plan, when it's like a 3-room, puzzle, it's just like,
Sure. Yeah.
you have to balance that correctly. So we kind of got Josh, our DM, got a really good job of kind of laying this out and what was our goal for this. And then us getting good access to information, us figuring out all the ins and outs, where our hangups could be. And then we as a group, what I like to do is we do a bullet point of steps, right? By the time we get to step 4, if we complete step 4 in our little plan, that will be success. And now what we do is each of those steps lay it out very simply. So we know step 1, we're going to go in through the roof. Okay. Step 2, we need to make our way down to the basement. And step 3, we need to get this guy out of here and get out alive.
Yep.
And so the thing is like, the part of the fun of these things is that your plan will never go exactly to as you have.
Of course.
wanted
No,
it to.
no plan survives contact with the enemy, as the old saying
Right.
goes.
Exactly. So you cannot fall in love with your plan 100%, and which is why you can't overthink it and over strategize it, because your plan is likely to be out the window in halfway through, or less or more. But you all are on the same wavelength. And then you have a couple of like contingencies that you quickly discuss. Like, if we get caught here, here's what we're going to do. Okay. And that way the action keeps moving. And so it feels more like a live action event. And it was a great job. We rolled minimal dice, which I was really impressed with. He didn't make us do stealth checks every 5 steps. That kind of thing can really kind of hurt you, and that kind of stuff. He rewarded good ideas. Me as the illusionist wizard, I was able to cast my disguise self
an illusionist wizard is so good on a heist. That's great.
We had like a sub quest of also get these documents out of here. And I was like, and I didn't tell the guys I was going to do this, because I'm like, this would be kind of fun. Like, as we had gone through step 2, we're getting down to the basement. As we go into he unlocks the door to the basement. I said, guys, I'll be down there in a moment. And I poof into one of the guards, and I walk across the hallway in between the pathing guards, and they had to go down. And so I purposely separated myself from the party. Know I could get into trouble. Know that I didn't even know what was behind the doors or exactly where I was looking for something. But I'm like, this is where it's a dramatic moment. and it ended up being very memorable. But anyway, it was just a really fun session because it didn't have to be this over the top heist thing that takes 4 or 5 sessions to go through.
No, best ones are usually done within like one session, right? I think that's true.
Yep, and it ended on the greatest way to end these is we had just scarcely got out, we jumped out, and somebody saw us, and now shit has hit the fan. So we end on a cliffhanger. Anytime you can end a session on a cliffhanger is great for the momentum for your next session.
Yes, I've done many a heist. I love a heist. I have like a deep love of that as a conceit in an adventure. So both as a DM and as a player.
Okay.
And so I won't go into too much detail because you had your story. I don't want to pound on top of it, but my favorite one that we ever did was a very high level heist. In Eberron, there is a Kundarak bank, okay, effectively. It is the most secure location on all of Eberron from the dwarves whose special magical mark is we keep things secure, okay? Like, as a society, they run the banking system, okay? So this is like Fort Knox times 10. Yes.
Yeah.
And exactly, it's robbing Gringotts, right?
Yeah.
And it was a rescue mission to get a person because they don't just store cash, they also store people for various and sundry reasons.
Yes.
And it's like a prison as well. And so, yes, going in and getting that person out. And it was the most insane, multi-layered, multi-planned heist we've ever executed on. It was insane. And this was my paladin Kafwin and the whole group. I will say simply this, John. I won't tell you the whole story because it'll go on too long. To get into the place itself was such a challenge that this is how we did it. We had to. They have a special vault called the Vault of Stone, where if somebody rich is bad, they get turned to stone and then stuck in that vault for some amount of time as punishment. They don't experience the time because they're made of stone, but it's like, well, we got to deal with you for a little while, but you're too rich or important to kill. So you go be a statue for 50 years and then we'll wake you back up. Okay. It's like temporary holding cell for rich people. Okay.
Okay.
So my paladin had an undead horse. Just don't worry about it. He was my friend. Okay. So we had to organize that all of us except me would get turned to stone.
Uh-huh.
I was inside the horse. Okay. So the horse had to be turned to stone. Okay.
Was his name Trojan?
No, it was, in this case, might as well have been, but no. And so I'm alive and fine and inside the torso of my stone undead horse, and the rest of the party's all stone, and we get shipped in, and then I have to turn my mount back into a living thing using my ability to like cure as a paladin to like remove conditions. And
while you're still inside of it.
While I'm still inside of it. But I have to stay inside for like 4 days before I can execute this plan. So I have to live in the horse for like 4 days.
Do you have like a breathing straw? Like a little straw to get air?
He has little holes in him. He has little holes. He's undead. He wasn't completely solid. And it wasn't that. It was that wasn't the problem I had to solve. It wasn't the breathing thing. It was the what to do with other bodily functions. Anyways.
Right. Yeah, you got 4 days in there, dude.
Yeah. And then I had to like turn him back to a thing, like an undead thing, and then bust out of his torso and then cure everybody else, all without alerting the guards. So that shows you where that started. That was just like literally step 1 of this heist.
So I guess I learned something today, and that is the stone spell is more like an M&M. It has a thin candy shell, and the entire insides is still people's, right?
Well, it's because
your plan doesn't work.
He was an undead torso of a horse. Like he was a horse that I had hollowed out. Like he was zombified. So I just went in and scooped all the other stuff out because it didn't hurt him any.
Oh, you just ice cream scooped him out.
Yeah.
And you got up inside like one of those things in Planet Hoth. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so that makes sense. So you were, because you've scooped it out, the actual insides of the monster are not that little cocoon shape that you made for yourself.
Right. Think of it like when you do a 3D print in resin and leave the inside open.
Okay.
Right. That's where I
Right.
was hiding.
Now, did your character know this? Did you as a player know that that's how that worked? Or did you think there was a chance where it's just like, you're also stoned because you were inside of it?
No, we knew it how we
It's like a Russian
like,
doll situation.
yeah, no, we knew that this would work.
If
Yes.
you turn a Russian doll to stone, do all the inside nesting dolls are they also stone? These are the kinds of
It's a good question.
questions.
I don't have answers to this. Yeah, these are good questions you're asking. I'm not sure I have an answer.
These gazeboids are the questions you make sure are clear with your DM before you follow through on a plan. So it is not
Absolutely.
all 50 years go by and you guys walk outside and there's just like ornithopters flying over because all the technology has advanced. You're like, oh shit.
Right.
I don't think we got
Like
away with this one, guys.
like going between the Last Airbender and like the Legend of Korra or whatever. You come out, it's like, where'd all the cars come from?
It's Back to the Future, the RPG. So I'm all for that. I'm all for that. So I think it's probably time, now that we've talked about a couple of sessions that we talked about Dungeon Crawl Classics, to jump into the main topic today, is what makes a good
100%.
adventure. And I think there's something I wanted to put an asterisk on this before we start, because this episode feels like it's very DM focused. And there's some aspects of it that I think are. And I do think that it's healthy for all players of Dungeons and Dragons to stretch your creative legs, even if you have no plans of immediately becoming DM, to really start thinking about the kinds of things you'd like to do to your own game you'd like to make one day, or something you'd want to do next month. But also, I think understanding things from the sides of the DM really helps us as players too, because some of the things we'll see and what make a good adventure today are things that you can actually actively guide and lead your DM or lead your party
100%.
in a way to make the adventure better than it was on paper or on that Google Doc that it was to begin with. So I think there's a lot to learn here and to take away for your sessions improving as a whole, whether you're DMing, whether you are thinking about being a DM, or whether you're just looking at through the eyes of the players.
That's right. So, okay, what makes a good adventure, right? Or what makes an adventure not boring? Look, I've played through a lot of the like pre-written adventures over my, 36 years of gaming, right? Like it's something you do. Like obviously you use a ton of pre-written adventures, right? As a DM or otherwise. Sometimes as part of like the whole campaign. We both, you and I have done like those whole campaign paths. And you and I, I'm sure, have also just dropped individual little adventures into like small little adventure parts into a greater campaign we were doing. Okay.
Right.
And I should state here, by adventure, I don't mean whole campaign. I really don't. Okay.
Yep.
I think there is a very big difference between an adventure, i.e., something you're going on that is like maybe a level, maybe a couple levels, something like that, right? Versus a campaign. Okay.
This is a chapter in a book or a scene in the movie, not the whole of the thing.
That's right. That's right. And it's important to set that difference right up top.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk about a couple of I'm going to lay out a couple of different adventures that I will reference here regularly throughout this, but there are certainly others. They come from very different time periods. So the first one is one I've already mentioned, which is the Return to the Keep on the Borderlands, or the original Keep on the Borderlands, both of whom have many of the same qualities, and I think are both excellent adventures. Those are very old. The original Keep on the Borderlands was published in 1983, if memory serves. Return was published in 97. And then the next one I want to mention, I don't know if you've played this one, is, did you ever play Dragon Heist, the 5e adventure?
No, that was one of the only ones that was part of like the Adventurers Guild sections that I didn't play.
Okay.
But I did not have good things to say about the other ones I did play, so that's probably why I didn't do that one.
And that's fine. I understand that. Here's what I'll say. It's probably the best 5th edition adventure
cool
that they've written, like actual 5th edition adventure. Honorable mention here certainly goes to any of the incarnations of Ravenloft, although it is sort of its own thing that often ends up becoming a whole campaign. It's a little bigger. But like original Ravenloft was more of just an adventure, and then it got built out, and yada yada yada. I'm not going to get into like the history of Strahd and the Ravenloft sort of thing, but at any rate, that's certainly another one that would fit many of the qualities I'm going to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I think those to me are some of the best. Now, why? Okay. Why? Why are they good? Okay. So, John, here we go. First important thing. I want to talk about this. This is my first criteria. Any good adventure has to have adventure nodes. Okay.
Explain that to me.
All right, sure. What I mean is that there are individual hooks within the adventure that you can go explore, get into, and that are tightly tied to other things nearby them and loosely tied to the other nodes. Think of like how a node works, right? You've got a node, it's got a loose web, you got a web of nodes, right? Yeah, that's kind of okay. So like in Keep on the Borderlands, you have the Keep and stuff like that, of course. And then there's the Caves of Chaos, but there's other things in the wilderness too. There's like knoll camps and lizard men and weird jungle or forest to explore and stuff like this, right? Each of those is its own little node, and each of them loosely ties to the other. For example, if you go to and get in with the gnolls and don't start a fight, you can learn that they got kicked out of the caves, and they will give you good information about what's going on in the caves. Okay. But the gnolls and their whole woods is an adventure node in itself, full of like weird traps and monsters and stuff like that you can get into. And obviously the gnolls themselves, that's a node, and so on. Right. Okay. You've got like the Keep itself is an adventure node. You can learn about what's going on elsewhere, but there's like little mysteries and things to solve that it tends to be higher on exploration and role playing, but there's still combats that can happen there and weird things you can discover and mysteries and stuff like that. But it ties, so it has a bunch of loosely connected adventure points, right? Like talking to this person will tell you more about this person and so on, right? Like they all have connections to each other that you can learn about and explore and discover. But you can also then learn about what else is happening elsewhere in the adventure. Does this make sense?
So tell me if I'm wrong in this. The key with this is that these nodes, because there is a connected nature to them, allows your world to feel alive, and it allows you to have cause and effect to decisions you make outside of this self-encompassed adventure.
That's right. Things in A will affect naturally things in B and C because the world is real and living and connected. By the way, you can like zoom in on this. Like we can zoom down, just sort of mouse wheel scroll in, like zoom, enhance, right? All the way down to the level of the dungeon, and think about like even an individual dungeon can be designed like this, right? Where individual nodes, like if you get in a fight, like think of sections of rooms literally separated by like just kind of longer hallways or connections or tunnels or whatever. If you get in a fight in room A, you stand a high chance of drawing attention from like whoever's in room B and C that's like right nearby, right? But you also might learn something about what's going on over in the next node that you've got to go through a long tunnel to, right? Like, oh, the boss is hiding up here, the treasure's over here, depending on like you capture somebody, you get information out of them, or you rescue a prisoner, or
right, or
you
somebody
talk to the house plant that's there, like
or
whatever,
somebody runs away and escapes the fight, and then they go inform others, and
exactly, and then another node gets involved. So like this can go all the way down to the level of the dungeon, in my estimation, where like the point being is that you have some small grouping of interconnected things that are highly entwined with each other, right? And by interacting with that, you get into that tight web, but in doing so, you also touch the loose other points. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's and the gemstone that we're mining down towards with this really, to me, feels like the feeling of a living world. And so it doesn't feel like a video game. It doesn't feel like a board game. It feels like the actions and the decisions that you make have repercussions, good, bad, and otherwise. And that's what makes the game exciting. And if you take that away, if everything is a single serving friend, then
just static mobs out there waiting to be farmed in a field.
Yes. Then it quickly becomes monotonous, and you realize the decisions that you make in the moment aren't that important.
Right.
If they don't affect whether it's good or bad, they don't affect larger things in the future. if you start to feel that, and I think there's going to be a bloodline through a lot or all of these in this episode, is that it's as important it is that you have these things to make an adventure successful. It's equally or more important that your PCs, the players, feel that. Because you can sit back and say, well, you did this, and actually the other gnomes in 2 rooms over were listening and they heard it, and then they decided to do this, that, and the other. If you never experienced that as a player, you never got to get
then
that sensation, then it didn't happen. Right. So your players need to get to feel this, and if they feel it, the whole game is now turned on its head in the best way possible, because they feel that everything matters and everything is connected. And that is how you go from a one shot where only the things that you do here matter to this is a larger thing. And you can certainly argue that the best one shots have these nodes and have a connectivity to them in their story in a single session,
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I agree completely. And this is where your point earlier about how it sounds like I'm giving advice to DMs or even to adventure writers or something like that. But this is also for players, because as a player, you can play into this, right? You can make choices to ask questions, follow up. You engage in the collaborative storytelling all the same, right? Being an active, engaged player, taking notes, asking questions, learning about the NPCs. What I've started doing with the recap at the beginning of my games, because I'm DMing right now, is I don't say what happened last week. I say, who did you meet? Okay. And why did it matter? Okay. Because I want them to lock these NPCs in their heads as real people, right? That they met, because hopefully it should matter. Because if they don't remember them, that tells me, the DM, I did a bad job of introducing that NPC and making them feel vibrant and real. Right. And I need to bring them back in and add more texture.
Yeah.
Okay.
They don't need to be a fully realized 100% real boy. But they do need to have enough of a 3 dimensions to them that there's at least one thing about them that is memorable, that they can that sticks out to them. And that if they were to randomly see that NPC in the street again, they would have an introductory statement and question to ask that NPC, because they know just enough about them to start up a conversation that's relevant to their relationship.
That's right.
So that's all that matters for most NPCs. And that means they need FaceTime. That means that they need to have these interactions that are unique to that NPC and where the PCs are in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And this leads to my next point, of what makes a good adventure right here. This is, the connection to it, because the next thing is an adventure needs good NPCs, period. A good adventure has good NPCs. And that isn't just the bad guys or just the good guys or just the people in town. It's people everywhere. Yeah. Everybody should feel realized in some way, right? I'll give you, and you're right. It doesn't take much to make people feel like an actual person. Simple example. One of the PCs went to the tailor to get some clothes. Okay. So the tailor is this guy named Quincy or something like that in the game. Okay. And yeah, Taylor. His name's Taylor. No, his name's Quincy.
Okay.
And Quincy is in love with the leather worker, with the tanner, okay, who's next door. And he's determined he's going to marry her, okay? And he talks about how, and I go into how wonderful she is, and he's like, oh, she's so great, she's so beautiful, she's so smart, she's so capable, she smells like roses and all this stuff all day. Now, she's a tanner. She's a leather worker, if you know anything about that.
She does not smell like roses.
Correct. And so then I have the PCs go over there, and it's just the hideous smell of, because I always try to work smells into the descriptions. I think it's really important. But anyways, they go over there and they're like, oh God, this is wretched, right? But it showed how how crazy head over heels in love this character is with her. That's it, right? That's the hook for this guy. And they all remember Quincy because of this, right? It's just that he had one thing, but it's a thing that we can all connect with. At some point in our life, we all probably were, stupidly in love or something like that, right?
Yeah. Blindly.
Yes. Yes, that's a good word. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And so to me, that means having interesting bad guy NPCs. Like some
Mhm.
bad guys will fight to the death. Some bad guys will be like, whoa, 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 hey, oh, hey, let's talk about this, huh? Let's maybe cut a deal here,
Yeah,
and
like
so on and so forth. And like they're all. I don't mean people. I don't mean humans, but they're all like three-dimensional to some degree beings, right? With like motivations and thoughts in their heads.
yep. And I think the repeat exposure, not trying to slow the progression to a crawl, which is easily done if you don't be careful. But repeat exposure allows these things to evolve, these NPCs to get more dimension to them, get to the heart of the matter quicker. As you know them, you know what their interests are, their
Right.
motivations, because every NPC has a motivation, could be very simplistic, could be very complex if you're the arch villain, or anywhere in between. And the quicker that they can understand, or at least the surface level motivations or the false motivations that they want you to think that they have, the quicker
Right.
that they can interact and they can work that in. And the more repeat exposures you have to an NPC, first of all, that tells you as a player that this person has got more importance, if I
Yep.
know that. And
Yep.
number two, it allows me to use them to pull and push the NPCs, or the PCs, excuse me, in a way that allows for more drama to happen in the story to evolve and more decisions to be made. One of the things in regards to NPCs that I wanted to bring up is a fault that many of us fall prey to, and that is to keep our villains off screen way too much.
Yeah. No.
I
They exactly. Thank you. They need to be around.
They need to be
Right.
around.
Yeah.
And which is why one of my favorite campaigns I ever ran was I did a full campaign of the 5th edition Strahd campaign. And
That's what I was gonna
from
say.
the
Yeah, this is where Ravenloft really shines.
yeah,
Strahd is like around a lot.
he's there. And he doesn't have to be. And there's something else really important I wanted to touch on a little bit later. But the intro to the entire campaign was them coming to at a massive dining table in this huge castle, and Strahd greets them all for dinner. The very first scene includes the guy they know that is
Yeah,
their
yeah.
job to kill. As
Yep.
players, they know, right?
Yep.
That from the very get-go. And the more that you introduce them, and the more that you can find ways that the villains, even if they don't know it's a villain, oh, this is such a great bait and switch, is to have your villains present, but they're not villains in the beginning of the story. And maybe you don't even make that decision from the beginning of your campaign. Again, how these nodes all connect, you may have this light bulb moment 3 or 6 months into the campaign that, oh my gosh, what if this guy ends up being the mass villain at the end? And maybe they think that they're going one way and we can turn them another. But either way, they're around. And the people that they're around the most are the people that they get connected to, the people that have the most emotional impact on them. And the most memorable moments are going to be around the people that they've been around more often, as opposed to just seeing this boss the second you walk into the boss room.
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong. There's, it's not that you can't run a game with like a sort of off-screen, ever-present bad guy. So think of like the Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Sauron doesn't ever show up
Right.
directly, right? He's like he's powerful and
Yeah,
he's
he
also an
doesn't need to.
insubstantiated fiery eyeball in a tower, right? Um, but like, or insubstantial, sorry, but like, the, but he's ever present
Yeah.
in there, right? Every time Frodo slips on the ring, every like, the feel of him, his influence across everybody else that they do meet, right?
Yes.
Through Saruman and every other person. So like, yes, you can have one be distant if the effects of the villain are still felt. You mentioned
Yes.
the Ravenloft thing. I ran through the Ravenloft actually, not super long ago, and like within the 5th edition time frame, we did the Ravenloft adventure, and we spent so much time with Strahd, like at various and sundry points where he would sort of interject himself into the thing, that
Mhm.
our characters, who were all like, we played this group of like really good, really nice people, okay, which made Ravenloft very funny,
Uh-huh.
honestly, because we were all like relentlessly positive people, like just as a group. Okay.
Man, you guys
Uh,
stick out like sore thumbs in that world.
oh yeah, we were just like, hey, what's going on around here? You guys seem sad.
Yeah.
Like we were just like the happiest, goodest people, and so by the time we got to the end, we were like, "Oh man, we feel really bad for this guy. Like, we don't want to hurt Strahd. He's clearly suffering. Like we
Right.
tried so hard to like save him and like help him out. Like he was because we had spent so much time with him and learned all of his story and everything, we were like, well, this is just clearly sad. This guy's
Yeah.
suffering. We got to help him.
You have
Right.
empathy for him. And that is
Yeah.
how I turned mine. Was they learned about 75% of the way through the campaign that there was a potential for another outcome for this.
Sure.
And they had to work closer and closer, and they could not make the decision which way they were going to go until the pinnacle of the campaign. They had to make a choice. And it
Right.
was one of those, there was no black and white. There was no, this is good, this is bad. There was more of the, which do you choose when neither feels exactly right, but it's what your characters would really, what is their gut telling them is a decision to make. And that only happened because he spent so much time face to face with Strahd to build this like empathy. Like, I mean, he is kind of sucking people's blood and killing them, and he is kind of using this as just like his giant like blood farm. However, he's trapped here. This kind of sucks. He's also kind of a prisoner here.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned Dragon Heist earlier. So we ran it a little unorthodox. It's a kind of a neat setup, John, just to kind of lay down a quick basic for you here. Effectively, you run it in one of 4 seasons, like literally winter, spring, summer, fall. Okay. And then that determines who ultimately kind of the oppositional force is, if that makes sense. Like there's 4 different kind of oppositional forces you can work against, and that are all like who you would expect, sort of the bad guys to be around Waterdeep and stuff like that, because it all takes place in Waterdeep, which is great. I love a city as a setting for a whole game.
Yeah.
But anyways, what was fascinating about it was, and it is that it contains all these great NPCs, because you can meet tons of interesting people around where you take up residence, because like in the first adventure you meet Volo and he like gives you a house just so you're forced to stay in the city basically and do the adventure, which is smart. Giving people real estate is always fun.
Oh yeah.
And but at any rate, that like surrounding your house are a bunch of really interesting NPCs, okay, and people that you can meet. And you also are all supposed to be part of the various and sundry factions of the city, and those all have lots of different NPCs and representatives that are relevant that you interact with quite regularly throughout the thing, right? Like they have their own wills and motivations, and since each member of the party is part of a different faction, sometimes those will clash, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
So you have like good organization and good organization at cross purposes. Yeah. Okay. Because they both just have different ends, right? They're not willing to kill each other for it, but they're willing to have like a tussle about it or an argument about it or something, right? Now, in that game, I also worked for Xanathar, like who's one of the 4 villains. Okay. So like you talk about planning heists, by the way, that whole game was planning heists. I was
You're
a
in
rogue,
Waterdeep.
one of my favorite characters ever. I'm in Waterdeep. We did so many heists. I would just like plan heists every couple adventures where I'd go in and steal stuff. And I tried to I would bring different PCs from the group with me. And the DM had to keep them fast because he didn't want to take away from everybody else who wasn't part of the heist. Yeah. So we would do I would submit all this planning and do it off cycle in between games. And like I would contribute. I'd be like, this is the kind of thing I want to go heist. I look around, like I would be you mentioned like being a player and being active. I would basically lay out like, I think there's a merchant like this somewhere in the city. I would like to scope his house. I would like to do this, right? And I would just like put out all this stuff and write the adventure effectively for the GM, who then just would like very quickly in the game give me some checks, do a couple things, educate how well I did what I was doing, and then we'd move on to the rest of the party. But I got to do fun heists, right? Anyways, because I worked for Xanathar, who's like a really lunatic villain, right? He's like an evil beholder. But he's also down in Skullport, which is another great location, full of another even more cool NPCs. He was just in the game all the time. So like the eventual big bad guy of the thing was just there all the time, hanging out, giving me directions. Directly, like giving me orders that went directly against what the other players have to do. So I would have to like manipulate the other players into like not getting what they want or working in my plans. Like I had to play the Dr. Doom sort of mastermind for the whole campaign. But anyways, like, yeah, having those villains there, it's just so good because the NPCs felt so real, if that makes sense. Right. Because they all had such, and this is the other thing, you mentioned it, clear motivations.
Yes.
Right. And when NPCs have very clear, grounded motivations, you meet them and they're like, they want to accomplish X. Okay, well, we're trying to accomplish X. Great, we're on the same page. Or hold on, we want to accomplish Y. Oh, we're at cross purposes, right?
Right.
And from that, interesting things emerge, right?
Anytime the players have a clear understanding of the situation, whether it's the motivations of an NPC, whether it's the workings of this mining organization, whether it's the layout of a dungeon or a building, the more information that they have the ability to gain access to, the more they can confidently make their own decisions. And they don't sit here on their hands waiting for
Right.
you as a DM to guide them by a string. And those are much more interactive, more engaging sessions for your adventures to run adventures where your players are engaged and that they are invested in what's happening, because it's their decisions that led them here. It wasn't you said go here, so we walked here, right? And that's really important. One more thing I want to mention on the NPCs, because it's kind of a big one, is that, and this is I have made this mistake, and I made it again recently in trying to run Kingmaker, and recognizing that it's something that we can all fall victim to, and how do you remedy it? And that is the simple state of proximity. You mentioned having the whole campaign, the majority of the campaign, take place in Waterdeep. You have built-in interaction with NPCs because of proximity. They're your neighbors. They're next to your hideout. All the time you are going back there. Me as a DM,
you walk out to go shopping, they happen to be walking down the same street. You
they're
just bump
there.
into them.
The dude whose house you robbed is 2 blocks over. You walk by him in the street. Proximity is very, very valuable as a tool that feels organic. And most often in RPGs, is we're running a multiple adventures or even a single adventure, we can find ourselves where the group is just continually moving a lot. And they don't have a home. That's why having a home or a home base of some kind is very valuable. One, it's a great early reward that the players can make their own decisions on what they want to do with their home, or how they want to stay in it, or maybe they're going to turn it into an Airbnb. Who knows? But they have the option. But
that's literally exactly what we did.
Right? You get to, if you have proximity for your NPCs, you make your life so much easier, rather than they're always on the run. The actual Lord of the Rings example is much more difficult to run long-term NPC interactions, because they are physically just continuing to move. They're just going east. And anytime you meet somebody,
well, it's technically like southeast, but sure,
close enough, more east than any other direction. Either way, they go to the elves. They stop at the elf city, okay? And they know they got to keep going for weeks and weeks past there. I don't feel as a player that these interactions are maybe as long-term valuable, unless we can, in this very short period of time, create allies, which doesn't feel realistic either way. That in a matter of, well, we showed up at noon, we got to leave tomorrow morning to keep going, that in those 12 hours, you've made allies that are willing to send an entire army, right? And the elves are known for being stubborn and much older than these silly mortals. So having those long-term interactions, multiple connection points via proximity, will make your life so much easier. And in those situations, and the Kingmaker campaign is a good example of, there's kind of a home base kind of a thing, but they're traveling for weeks at end, the PCs are, that you had to find ways to integrate your NPCs in a way that they would show up, or they'd stick with them for a while, they travel with them, or when they came back through, mental notes to myself that as they're coming through, they're going to hit them again. So we get those repeat exposures to important NPCs, and even them understanding. I'd often make my NPCs out in the wilds ask where the PCs make home in some form or another. And so they could find their way back there, not for always nefarious purposes, but if the PCs were used to just like, this is common knowledge that we tell people this, well, eventually something funny is going to happen back at home when you show up, because you told everybody where you stay. But it creates drama. So that was one thing I thought it was really important for us to bring up.
No, absolutely. I mean, part of it is like the Lord of the Rings reads well as a novel. It probably wouldn't play as well straight through as a campaign, but it is a good example of adventure nodes, right? Because
Yes.
you've got the Shire, and then Bree, and then Rivendell, and then Moria, right? And so on. Like I could keep
Yeah.
going, right? But like the point being is that each one of those ends up being an adventure node within the larger span, and they do impact out, right? Like when they're with the Rohirrim, right? That is stranding out to what's happening in Gondor,
Yeah.
right? Okay, the beacons are lit,
Right.
right?
You can even
And
say, oh, I got a question for you in regards to nodes. Are the Nazgul a node?
yeah, that's an interesting. I don't know if they're their own node, but they're wonderful connective tissue, right? Because
Right.
they're there all the time,
Right.
right? As a villain, like as they're effectively the avatar of Sauron, being ever present in the
Yeah.
game,
Yep.
right? They're there in the Shire, they're there in Bree, they're there at Weathertop, right? Like they keep running into these idiots,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I would
Okay,
even say that,
they the only time they go away for even a little while is when they get washed away outside of Rivendell.
oh, it almost, you could almost have that is a separate node north of all the other nodes. And then they have a dotted line connected to every
Right.
one.
Yeah.
And, thinking of something, a reoccurring villain or event or catastrophic natural disaster or something like that has multiple connection points, thinking about that as a node as you're designing the adventure or designing a campaign is a good way to describe things, and not necessarily putting them in separate silos, as NPCs are a separate silo from locations on the map.
Yep. So then all of this kind of leads to the next item for me, which is discovery and exploration,
Okay.
right? Like in a great adventure opens up lots of opportunities to explore and discover things. We talked about the allure of mystery and the
Yeah.
unknown earlier,
Yep.
right? And sometimes this can be as easy as like a dungeon that they go and investigate and find cool things about. That counts. That's
Mm-hmm.
fine, right? That's neat. This can be places in the wilderness, interesting NPCs they run across can be discovery, right? They go out into the wilderness, they meet a cool hermit druid that just lives out there and gives them some neat information about the monster woods, but in the druid circle and everything around them, it's safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so forth, right? And like the exploration and discovery can be finding old books that hint at like what's in the area. Like you find a tome that makes mention of an ancient castle that's sunk into the swamp nearby, full of treasure, right? That kind of thing. Okay, whoa, neat, cool. That's a thing I want to go. We should go check that out. Is that place still there? Is it still full of treasure? And so on and so forth, right? So like and having all these tiny little discovery hooks around, you have to have more than what your PCs are going to actually do.
Right. Yes, the age-old issue of creating more content than will actually see the light of day in your game. But if you don't do that, then it feels very two-dimensional very quickly.
Because it feels like the camera's too tightly focused,
Yes.
right? Where it's like we've all seen a movie where it's like, boy, are there no other people in this world? How are these characters just walking around and no one's around, right? And that's the sort of scenario that it leads to. Whereas you don't need to fully flesh out every hook and little piece that you give them, right? You just need to have the rumors, the hooks, the things, the ideas, and then they'll grab some. And those are the ones you write out, right?
Right.
The ones that they get interested in, that they follow up on, that they tell you and communicate to you, I'm interested in doing this. But when there's more than what they do, the world feels bigger than them,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, the world feels like there's much more out there than simply the few sentences that I described this location to you as. And that's the excitement of the game, is that, again, going back to the discovery and exploration of everything, of feeling that the decisions we make on what to investigate further, in which ideas or hooks catch our attention, and only go after those, leads me to feel that I have a narration in some regards to the story that we're being told. That's really, really valuable and really, really important. And the one thing trick that I do as a DM for these is I have a number of rumors and a number of locations, NPCs, secrets like this, but I keep them flexible enough that I can twist and turn a few knobs that they can fit into many different locales or many
Right.
different specific versions of this thing.
Yep.
This secret treasure location, the hooks as where they would to find out that it exists could be in a number of different places.
They can be spread out across the nodes and across the NPCs.
Yep.
Right. And again, that's not bad. I think some people might feel like that's a contrivance, but it's not. It's actually making the world feel more real because, of
Right.
course, people in this node and this node and this node all heard about this thing, maybe, but in different ways or have different angles on it or something like that. Right.
Yes. And it gives you enough of meat on the bone for you not to feel overwhelmed as a DM of having to create 50 different things between every session. But it allows you to find the things that really excite you and find ways to sprinkle them in there so that you're never caught completely unawares when the PCs are off running around and doing something interesting. And you want to reward them. And a great way to reward them is actual information and
Right.
pushing an interesting side story or side quest or something like that into their laps by doing that. So I think
Yeah,
that's a
they're
great
in
way to do that.
town and they learn the story of this like weird headless rider that's been
Mm,
patrolling the road and like and seemingly attacking bandits in the night, but recently it attacked an actual caravan. Okay.
right.
Okay, seems like something maybe we should look into, but maybe they just hear about it. Maybe that's not the main adventure they're on. They're there at the keep or the this town for other purposes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of do that. Then they go to a second location. Maybe they're out in the wilderness, dealing with their main adventure, and they run into an NPC who describes an encounter they had with the headless rider, where he spared their life, right, and gave them some
Mm-hmm.
kind of cryptic warning, right? And so weird because as soon as they hear about it from two different sources now it's like, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Something interesting is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can kind of sprinkle it around.
I like when it works together where they've heard a couple of these different lines of story and it's not apparent to them that it's the same thing.
Right. Or they conflict.
Yes.
One group says it's like this, the other group says it's like that, and they're not exactly the same.
Right. It's good for them to realize that rumors are just like taking at face value everything that a person on the internet tells you. They're not
Right.
always exactly words as written, right? So
Yeah.
that's good to learn that, but to tying in multiple lines together. All right, before we get on to the next one, which I think is a great one as well. There's one thing that I wanted to mention is kind of an overarching thing that I feel for running an adventure that's successful and at a greater level campaign that's successful. And that is a lot we're talking about here is running things out of books, as well as, also running your own things from scratch. I'm all about beg, borrowing, stealing adventures. Dungeon Crawl Classic is a great example. Here's a layout of a dungeon, the kinds of monsters, the kinds of things
Yep.
that live there. But I guess the best way I could describe this is investment in the adventure yourself. And what I mean by that is the players want to do, it looks like they're going to be some kind of a cavern dungeon. I'm going to go find something out of a book and I'm going to run it out of the book. You are setting yourself up for failure immediately. When you
If
put
you're just literally like turning the page and being like, okay, well, apparently what you see is this.
yes, and that happens, I would think it's safe to say more adventures that are run on the D&D game table in a given period of time are run that way than aren't. And I just want to encourage you to never run something just out of the book, because not because that they're terrible adventures or that like they're going to not be as good as something you could make yourself. That's not necessarily the case at all. But when you're not invested and really you understand the NPCs, you understand their motivations, you understand the overarching story and the dichotomy of how these different factions work together,
And you
different
can then
motivations
layer on
works.
top yourself with your
Yes.
own stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So then you can bring more life to it. And it's better you understand. And as you understand things better, you're going to have your own ideas or excitement and ways to bring it to a 3-dimensional scale instead of just words on a page. And that will make this over all the bullet points that we're talking about today. That's what it's going to raise them all up. But if you are simply expecting to run something out of a book, and to be able to, I can knock all these things out that John and Vince are talking about today, it's just not going to happen, because
Right.
you are leaning so heavily on everything that's on that page. And you are not you don't need to be a subject matter expert, but you need to be proficient in that adventure. And that means knowing things. You've written your own notes. I'll write notes to myself, a list of all the NPCs. It'd be like, here's her,
100%.
here's
Yes.
her job, here's her motivation, or here's an interesting thing about her. 1 or 2
Yes.
sentences. So I just by the act of reading, thinking through, and then writing, I find the physical act of writing or typing things out in my own words to describe an NPC or describe a location, it sticks in my memory. It's become a long-term memory at that point. Simply reading it to yourself through the pages of a book, I find that I cannot absorb and then bring it to life at a table as much as if I'm interacting with that, if that makes sense.
It 100% does. And like, yeah, I think that is so exactly correct. I'll give you an example of that out of Dragon Heist. When, the Dragon Heist thing, as I said, you get that house like right away, right? But our characters, we got a house and we turned it into a hotel. And we then got real interested in real estate. Like my character from the heist money was interested in investing in real estate to launder all my money, right? So, so as a result, like the GM has to layer on top of this adventure all of this like political machinations as I'm like lobbying the lords of Waterdeep and stuff to like buy properties and do all these like business transactions and like all this stuff because I just like I'm suddenly becoming like a real estate mogul in Waterdeep. I like opened a couple of restaurants. All these different things are happening.
You're going to
And
city council.
none of that's in the adventure, right?
Like,
But the GM had
to
such proficiency with the adventure they could then layer that on top. Go
You're
ahead.
going to city council meetings to try to keep property taxes low.
Correct. Yeah, like literally. Yes.
Yes. And that is like, how do you run that if you're going directly by the book? You don't.
Right.
You don't. You say, and then you are running dangerously close to the key failure in running Dungeons and Dragons is just saying no. If he just says no, that's not really anything you can do. Well, now like it doesn't take very many of times of that, of you being proactive as a player in the game and interacting and trying to get things to see how things work and how the world changes based on how you interact with them. A straight door closed in your face with a no by a DM, you are quickly uninvested with that entire campaign because you know what you do is very likely not to affect anything.
Especially when it feels like it's something you should be able to do, right? Yes. If you ask the GM, can I like jump to the moon? It's like, well, no, obviously.
You can attempt it.
Right, yeah. You try, you didn't get there, right? Like, and that feels very real. Like nobody actually expects that unless their character's like, I don't know, the Hulk or something, whatever. But like can I go interact with city council to try to buy a piece of property? Yeah. Like, yes, that's how the world works, right? Like, or whatever.
What is the system of government you have set up in the city of Waterdeep, sir?
Right. So like the answer can't be no. Otherwise it feels like we're not actually living in a real world here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the downside just real quickly. Like we talked about discovery and exploration and mystery. I told the sort of the allure of the unknown story earlier. I do want to talk about the challenge of mystery and the dark side of it. I think you have to be careful with it that it doesn't become the whole thing. Especially not one big overarching mystery. Like I've run overarching mystery games before. Okay. So what I mean by this is like, think about like an Agatha Christie novel. Okay. That has generally one. Oftentimes she's smart. She's one of the most amazing mystery writers in history. She will often have sub mysteries in there that get solved smartly. But I think people fall into the trap of it's like, there's been a murder. We have to solve who the murderer was. That's the whole thing. Okay. If that's it, it becomes very hard to sustain that for any length of time in a meaningful way where you're getting information and yet not solving the thing. Right. So the challenge of it is you can have a larger mystery going on, but you need small mysteries that sort of contribute to that, right? What happened to these people? What is this group's motivation? What's this ancient tome actually written? What is it saying? Right? Why have 4 shops been robbed in the past 2 weeks of these strange esoteric components? Right. In fact, it all leads to this one big mystery of like what a cult is on about or something. Right. But they get the win, if you will, of like, oh, we solved the individual mystery and now more questions are revealed. So that's all I wanted to say there is like, you can't, when doing an adventure, stay away from the one overarching everything is this one boom monolithic mystery and instead leave lots of little unknowns to solve.
Yeah, that it will wear down over time. As exciting, as amazing of a writer, as how a great planner as you are, it's a hard thing to sustain long term. And that is why I think I had a serious level up as a DM the day it popped into my head that a campaign is not a movie. A campaign is a miniseries.
Right.
By that, I mean that, okay, this campaign lasts 18 episodes, 18 1 hour episodes if it was a miniseries. In each of those episodes, there is a minor story arc that happens. So there's a satisfaction, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and there's an evolution of characters and story. But across the entire 18 episode series, we get the major story. And if it was only the major story that we were adhering to over those 18 1 hour episodes, we would crash and burn halfway through because we get no satisfaction. We get no interesting beginning, middle, and end, the full tiny story arc. And we don't get to see the evolution of the characters and the NPCs and how things changed over time. And that really, if you can adhere yourself to that, you'll really find yourself like feeling like you've got more control, because that's some of the hardest things is running a longer campaign, is feeling like these ends come unraveled the more sessions you play, and how do I tie them back together. But just and for my larger story, I like to don't feel like I have it all figured out. The players are going to do a great job to help me figure out what that whole story arc is going to be, because I'm just going to connect these nodes through the multiple adventures and then let that build into something that the direction that they're choosing to go with that. And so that's really important. I did want to say one interesting thing, also kind of a caveat, something to be wary of in regards to discovery and exploration. It can very quickly, if you're not too careful, if you over inundate with these side quests, side missions, side locations.
Oh yeah, everything. Then it feels too scattered, right?
It feels scattered, and they lose track of what was their the larger goal, the important thing, and they'll lose interest, or they'll lose track, or it's like the thing that's pulling them, it kind of releases its tension a bit. And so be careful to not over inundate them where they just everyone's played those video game RPGs where there's so many side quests and you're like, I've been in this area for I don't know, 10, 12 hours now, and I guess I should go back to the main story quest, but I can't remember what was happening in this main story quest. That kind of a feeling. You don't want that 100%. In your D&D game either.
The key is to often have some of these little side quests also have hooks back to whatever the main thing is. You rescue the person that was kidnapped and they have some information about what the cult's doing or whatever, right? Like, because they happen to, the person who kidnapped them, they were tied up, but they heard them interact with a cult member and got some information, right? Or whatever. Okay. The point is that they don't all need to tie back. But again, if some of them do, then one, it reinforces them going back to the main plot line, but two, it makes the world feel more real, interconnected, lived in, stuff like that, right?
So if they never investigated that interaction would still happen. It would still have some kind of effect on the larger world. By us being nearby, we got to see it firsthand. And so thereby we feel there are other things happening in the world that are affecting all these other, things that are going to go on. And it makes it feel alive. Yeah,
that's right. So here's my last point, John, and then we can wrap this up.
Okay.
My last point of what makes, or I want to know if you've got anything that I missed. My last point is you got to have stuff for everyone to do something without making it required. So what I mean by this is in a good adventure, there's kind of places for each character, usually defined by their broader archetypes. Sure. Okay. To shine. So there's roguey stuff to do and clericy stuff to do and magicy stuff to do and fightery stuff to do. You get what I'm saying, right? But none of them are required. They're not hard gates that stop progression if you don't have that role, but they are all things that can contribute to your knowing more, being better prepared, getting some kind of win, getting more or less success, right? They become degrees of success, ways to open degrees of success rather than hard requirements or light switches. Yeah.
Yes. You want the following phrase in some fashion to be said in the session. Man, I was sure glad that you're with this group, because otherwise that would have
Right.
really sucked to do. And the key part of
Yeah.
that is we could have done it, but it would have sucked without you.
Yep.
It would have been so much more hard, or like, I don't know how we would have done it, and it would have been much more dangerous, or this, that, or the other.
Thank God we had you, and you're super skilled in on arcana and magical writings, and you had the cool spell that let us translate the tome that gave us the answer, or you were really cool at getting past all the traps, or dot to dot to dot to dot to dot ad
Yeah.
infinitum.
Yeah, and these shouldn't necessarily be laid out like a breadcrumb trail of that. Just like, this one says the face, and this one says the fighter,
Right.
and this one says the thief. Like, it shouldn't be so apparent, but you want them to look into their character, look at their skills, look at their abilities and things, and say, okay, I think I've got something good for that. Like, you want them to be the proactive part in it. You are simply setting up the situations or the scenes for them to excel. And that gets a win-win. You feel like the things that you've set up, you feel the satisfaction that they were able to find a way to get through them, and they feel valuable as a character, as a unique something that they bring that the others don't. There's
Absolutely.
another way that, so yes, you can look at this in class, like which class or archetype they're playing. You can look at it from a skill perspective, and sometimes
Sure.
those are kind of mishmashed together.
Yeah, they kind of often overlap in some way, but yes, you're
Overlap.
right.
Yep. And you also, and I mean, we need to do a whole episode of the personality traits of different players and
Oh
satisfaction.
yeah, sure.
The love language of D&D, right? That's an entire
Yes.
episode I would love for us to have, but that's a key part of it. What kind of player are you, and what gives
So
you
good point.
satisfaction at the table? So some people love to tinker with the world. Okay. So no matter what class they're playing, it's like, well, do we do a trap every single episode? Do we do a locked door every single episode? No, but you're the kind of person that you really enjoy poking and prodding and engaging in the world in weird ways to see how far you can take it. Well, there'll be one of those, and then there's the other kind of player that just likes to sit back and likes to absorb and experience the story. Maybe they don't interact a whole lot, but just seeing some grandeur or something unique or aha moment happen in the story
Yeah,
brings them
yeah.
satisfaction. So sometimes those players are the trickiest, but really, if you do a good job in telling the story, you've already helped them. So,
Yeah, just have a big cool moment they get to experience, right? And they're like, "Oh,
right.
that was super cool. This amazing thing happened and I got to see
Yes.
it." Yeah.
Yes. Some people want to be in the spotlight is on them. Some people want to be the amazing Spider-Man where they are the hero and other people are just
Yeah,
kind
they
of their
want to feel like the
sidekicks.
big damn hero and go and like, kill the bad guy. Like, have a good bad guy that they can punch in the face and rescue the captured prisoners, right? Like, yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Kind of all those different components. Yes.
Yep. Yes. And I think that that's a great kind of goldfish bowl to put those check marks into. And that is under the umbrella of an adventure. So let's say this adventure takes us on average 3 sessions for us to get through. Every single session at the table, if you required yourself to check all those boxes in your table of 47 players, is going to be ridiculous. But if it's over the course of this whole adventure, they each have their shining moment, that one shining moment, then they'll get that feeling, and then they'll have that's their peak if you're looking at like a graph, but there's going to be
Sure.
other highs and lows just because they're having fun and engaged in the session. That's a great one. It's something for everyone. Yep.
I once drove through a town in Wyoming, and when we entered the edge of the town, that had that green sign there. So like sometimes you'll drive in, you'll see that little green sign that's like you're entering this thing and population this and so on and so forth. Like it has the interesting facts about that town. The
Right.
population of that town was the same number of people that are at my D&D table each week. So we don't have our own post office.
Right. Was that name of that town wasn't Bill, Wyoming, was it?
I couldn't even tell you. It's 20 years ago, but I don't know.
Okay. It's where I go. Antelope hunting is in the middle of bumblefuck nowhere, Wyoming, and the closest town is Bill, Wyoming, and I think that town is roughly the amount of people at your D&D table. And
Sure.
there's the only thing that's there is an old timey post office that looked like Wild Bill Hickok was in that post office when it was like 40 years old. Like, it's the only thing there, and that's exactly
Amazing.
what I thought of. Like, man, you ever want to just like get rid of a body and no one's ever going to see it? Just drive to Wyoming. You'll be fine.
I don't have a lot of people there.
I got a lot of cows
Okay.
though.
Yeah, sure. So the I think in summary, right, for me, the sort of the thing that jumps out about all this, if I was to just sort of summarize it all up, right,
Uh-huh.
is that an adventure is the most interesting when it's segmented but connected,
Uh-huh.
populated by what feels like real people who the PCs then, especially the different PCs, have different chances to interact with each of those adventure nodes and individuals in ways that are speaking to them. Not all at once, not every time, not everything needs to be connected, right? But the point is where you can draw those little lines, have those little opportunities that if writ large, right, over the adventure, there's something for everybody to do. There's interesting NPCs for people to interact with who will get along better with different players. There's hooks from connecting the various nodes, and there's interesting mysteries for them to explore and discover. You've got a winner, right?
Right.
Then everything else is just gravy. Like the actual fundamentals of like doing exploration, doing skill checks, having combats, that will all just filter in to
Right.
it, right?
Right.
That will just be the bones that make up the actual skeleton, right? And you're fine.
Yeah. I think to me is if nothing else, if you can tell yourself, I could in an elevator ride of 5 floors, I could tell a total stranger the synopsis and the exciting parts of this thing I'm about to run, to this D&D game that I'm about to go, run for some friends. If you can do that and you're excited about it, I think you've done 80% of the work there.
I
You
agree.
know? Yep.
Yep.
And because that means if you're able to do that, that means you're invested in the players in your world. And by players, I mean the NPCs, your understanding of who your player characters are, and you have an understanding of how this interesting story is about to unfold. If you can do that, you will be able to improvise and adapt because you know how it's connected and you know how all these nodes work together. And again, you don't have to be an expert, but you need to be proficient enough that you could tell a total stranger in a 5-floor elevator ride what this is and why it's going to be cool.
Totally good. Yep. Agreed. Agreed completely. All right, buddy. I think we got there.
Man, there was a moment here about halfway through this episode where we try to keep ourselves about an hour and 20 minutes. I was like, man, there's no way we're getting this done in an hour and 20 minutes today. And I know, like, we were like, yeah, this could be about 2.5 hours and we'd be fine. But, we want to keep this sustainable because we know that if this hour and 20 stretches to 2, and then at 2 is the regular, and then it becomes 2.5, and then 2 is the regular, this is going to be, it'll just be like a live play session of us talking, and it's immediately uploaded because it's always talking about TNT nonstop.
Sure. Which is more or less my life in reality, but sure,
Right.
I understand.
Yeah, that is what we're here for anyway. I mean, let's be honest. If we're not here, we're not playing D&D, we're thinking about D&D. If we're not thinking about D&D, we're talking about D&D. If we're not talking about D&D, we're painting miniatures and thinking about D&D. So
there you go.
There's some other nerdy stuff brought in there, but now you know the deep psyche that is Vince and I's brain. Thank you, Gazeboids, for joining us. Like it or not, that is your name now, so you better just let it settle in, sink in, and we appreciate you joining us. As always, if you enjoyed this, if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe over on YouTube, even if you listen to us on the podcast locale. Also, give us a quick 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. It's only a couple of clicks away on your phone to give that review. You can also write out something, like proud to be a Gazeboid or something like that. That would be great to help us too. Vince, any parting words for the Gazeboids?
Hey, everybody should drop a yay Gazeboids down in the comments. I think absolutely. There, I want to see that. People are excited. I also want people to share. Just if you think there's another cool adventure, there's so many great adventures that have been
Good
published
idea.
for any game system. I want you to drop down what you thought was a cool adventure and why it meant something to you. I have been loving reading all these comments and people sharing stuff. Somebody actually turned me on to an adventure in the last podcast that I am like very excited to go look up and play. I had never heard of it before. So I want you to share the cool adventures you had, especially if it's like something published that we can go get access to. Because I'm always looking for more good adventures like this. So share your own experiences.
That is a brilliant idea. I love having this small encyclopedia of resources that I can lean on, not knowing when I'll need them, but if I know that they're there and they're on my shelf or I have the virtual version saved that I can go and reference. And if I get a recommendation from a Gazeboid that's like, hey, this one's really solid. It's a really good dungeon crawl. It's a really good outdoor thing. It's a really good undead thing. Then I was like, oh, great. I got another thing that I can grab when I need it. And I appreciate that. So that's a great recommendation. So yeah, let us know what are your go-tos. So some of your favorites, some most memorable adventures published. Could be free, could be something we'd have to go buy, a physical book, could be 40 years old, or it could be 4 months old. We want to hear about it. So thanks,
right.
everybody. We will see you either in a week or in 2 weeks. Who knows? We don't know, but it won't be that long. You'll be fine. See you then. Bye.